Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today, I am super stoked to be doing another back-to-back comparison with two of my favorite Kawasaki motorcycles. The first one here is Kawasaki's 1981 CSR1000. And it was actually labeled a KZ1000M. And it had the KZ1000 motor, and this is a second generation really a new from the ground up KZ1000 motor. So I know it doesn't look quite like the Z1 motor, and that's because it's not. It's a completely different unit. The CSR was the cruiser style Kawasaki 1000 with the spoked wheels. If you wanted the mag wheels, you could get the LTD version. But other than some minor paint work, the LTD and the CSR were the same bike. On this bike, I've actually updated the brake lines and the braking system on it to kind of bring it up to modern standards. I've also, just because it's an old KZ, I've also put the Delcovic 4-into-1 header on it, and I've put a lower MGO Magna wide handlebar on it, really to give it the handling and the kind of confidence in the corners that I really like. This bike is just a hoot to ride. It is all about the motor, and it's entertaining. It makes me smile every time I ride it. In the other corner here, we have Kawasaki's 2002 ZRX1200R. And the ZRX is probably my favorite retro-style motorcycle. It's actually now a classic, being, this is a 2002, it's 2022 right now, and it's 20 years old. So it's already getting into that. In 5 years it'll actually be an antique, which is just amazing to me because I remember when they came out. Both of these bikes have big Kawasaki 4-cylinder motors. This is the last kind of generation of the air-cooled KZ motors, and the ZRX is actually based on the motor. It's a long-lost relative of the motor that was debuted in the 1984 Ninja 900. And so it's been punched out all the way to 1200 cc's, and in the ZRX it's tuned for torque. It makes 80 foot-pounds of torque and 115 horsepower at the rear wheel, and so it is a really stout performer. On this ZRX, I'm running the ART Pro Series 2 exhaust, and it's a slip-on exhaust. It's not a full system, but it gives it just some nice tone and nice sound. The ZRX was really designed as a sports standard, and so it rides tighter. The suspension is stiffer, the brakes are bigger, and it's really, as far as sport riding goes, in the corners, in the mountains, under braking, all of that stuff, it does have an appreciable advantage over this KZ. But on paper, just because something is faster or better performing, it doesn't necessarily mean it's more fun to drive. So what we're going to do, we're going to drive these two bikes back to back, and I'll give you kind of my impressions on what they're like. What's it like to transition from one to the other, back to back, and see what those differences are, what that impression is when you switch from motorcycle to motorcycle here. So let's find out what these bikes are like to ride. I'm going to grab my helmet, and I'll bring the camera along. Let's ride.
I am currently riding Kawasaki's 1981 CSR1000. It's the KZ1000M. And the first thing I'm noticing sitting on this bike is just how comfortable it is. Everything is right to hand. It fits me very well. The reach to the bars is nice. It's really not that much of a forward lean, but just a little bit to be kind of sporty. And these are custom bars. I put the MGO Magna wide handlebar on this bike, and it really improved the handling. And the glorious sound from the Delcovic exhaust, just, it makes riding this bike so sweet. I've got the carburation finally settled on this, and it carburetes beautifully. It runs super nice. I really like the way this bike is set up because I can just cruise down through at slow speeds and be really comfortable. I can enjoy the countryside, enjoy the ride, and then, you know, when I want, it has such an eager power plant. Yeah, that is amazing. That's amazing how hard this thing pulls for an 81. It really pulls nice. The handling on this bike is not bad. It really does handle nicely. Due to the gearing, it's geared pretty short, so this is not a high-speed bike. But it is super entertaining, you know, up to 85 miles an hour. It gets there so quick. The motor is tractable down low, but it is, when you get on and off the throttle, it picks up pretty instantly. So the throttle motion on this bike it's very direct. And it's not super forgiving if you're used to a smaller bike and used to just being able to twist the throttle, just crack it wide open every time you want. You can get yourself in trouble on this bike. It's been a little while since I've ridden this bike, and I've just kind of forgotten how much I enjoy riding it. At 55, I don't really get any vibration through the seat. I don't get any vibration through the pegs, but I do get a little bit of vibration through the handlebars. This bike really does have the heart of a super sport bike from the early 80s. And even in the handling, the braking, and the engine performance, it feels more akin to a sport bike than it does to a cruiser. And so I know it has kind of that traditional cruiser styling, but if you're thinking that this is going to be a relaxing ride and, you know, something where you just are laid back all the time and, you know, you can be lazy with everything, you're going to be disappointed. And this bike is a ripper, and it's entertaining and it's fun, and I love riding it. So back to back with the ZRX, this KZ1000 CSR is kind of similar feeling in a lot of ways. It's really surprising. They're both very, not touchy on the throttle, but very direct. They have instant throttle response, and so in that way they're very similar. This bike actually rides a little bit more plush, but the handling on this bike, especially lower speed handling, is fantastic. If you get out into sweepers, you know, 80-mile-an-hour sweepers and things like that, this bike is not going to be composed. It's really going to be kind of pushing the limits of it, and that's really never what this bike was designed for. Yeah, right now this bike is comfortably doing the speed limit, but it is, for me, it's itching to go. It's just itching to rip it up a little bit. It just, I can feel, you know, that heart of a sport bike just wanting to break out. Makes me want to be a bit of a hooligan. If I was doing a longer trip, the ZRX's taller gearing would actually have an advantage. I don't think either of these bikes actually offer much in the way of wind protection, so neither one is really a highway bike. The instrumentation on both of these bikes is nearly identical. They both have a big speedometer and a big tachometer and a nice fuel gauge. Those are just the essentials of motorcycling. This bike will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up with the pull from the engine and just the howl from that Delcovic exhaust. And I'll take this bike through a set of twisties here. Transition wise, this bike transitions just super easily from side to side. It's stable enough at those speeds that, you know, in the lower speed stuff that I normally do, it really handles nice. It's not wobbling all over the place. It's composed, and the suspension is a nice kind of a compromise between firmness and ride. So to sum up the CSR, it is not a really good cruiser. It's too on and off with the throttle. It's too edgy. And so, you know, when you think of a cruiser, you want to relax. And this thing it's just too closely related to a sport bike. And as such, it really benefits from the addition of a handlebar, the addition of the pipe, the upgrade to the brakes. And the way that it's set up now, it is fantastic fun. It's just a super comfortable, very entertaining, slightly edgy muscle cruiser. Well, what you're not seeing in this video is the big smile on my face. And it is a gorgeous day, and honestly, I would rather just be taking a day off and riding. And just enjoying being on this KZ1000. It is such a fun, entertaining place to be. I am currently riding Kawasaki's 2002 ZRX1200R back to back with their 1981 KZ1000M CSR 1000. And first thing I'm noting right off the bat, switching from the CSR, is this bike definitely has more of a forward lean to the bars. The bars are lower and they're narrower. I'm also noticing that the engine is smoother, and the CSR really doesn't vibrate much through the seat or the pegs, but it definitely vibrates more through the bars than this bike does. This bike definitely has a quieter exhaust on it, and that's just the nature of, this is a slip-on, and the one on the CSR is a full system. I can also tell the different tire sizes on this bike, and this bike at highway speeds, I'm doing about 65 right now. It's super smooth, and it kind of rolls from side to side very nicely and smoothly. And so it gives you a little bit more confidence at higher speeds going around corners. Definitely a more sporting flavor to it. Oh yeah. The ZRX is just so refined and so smooth. And it just, anytime you get on the throttle, it just goes. But the gearing on it is higher significantly than the CSR1000. Fourth gear on the ZRX is geared exactly like fifth gear on the CSR. So I just put the bike in fourth gear now. I'm going down through, and if I get on it, the acceleration is shocking. So this bike is definitely quicker than the CSR. The brakes are outstanding. It's very tight. It's not moving around on the suspension. Hard on the brakes. Oh, that sounds so good. The level of refinement on this ZRX is really deceptive. It's so smooth, it's so easy, it's so capable that it doesn't feel as edgy as the CSR. The CSR is definitely a more visceral ride. Actually, the gearing on the CSR is lower, and so just it's touchier on and off throttle. And this thing is, in comparison, it's just kind of smooth and easy. It actually takes a little bit more throttle travel to get hard acceleration. But the reality is, even though it doesn't feel as edgy as the CSR, in every performance category, this thing just pretty much trounces the CSR. And so if you're doing a track day or you're doing a longer day of sport riding, unless the roads are really, really tight, this is just going to walk. And really, this was designed from the outset to be more sporting. You have to keep in mind that the CSR was designed to be a cruiser. The suspension on this bike is fully adjustable front and back, and it just gives a more controlled ride, very, very much more sophisticated than that of the CSR. And even though there's a lean to the bars, that wind that you get on your chest is actually keeping you up off the bars. It's not uncomfortable. It's actually a little bit more comfortable at those speeds, 55 plus, than the CSR is. To me, the ZRX is just a great combination of really good looks. It looks like the super bikes from the 80s on steroids. It's got incredible performance, and then it's also got this just really high level of refinement, so it is not punishing at all to ride. And you can ride it at really any speed and ride it confidently. And that mid-range out of the corners is just awesome. And then there's those brakes that are just, I can feel the weight on my cheeks as I hit the brakes. The front end was getting a little bit light coming out of that corner, and I think with a little bit of practice I could come out of that corner and wheelie it just on the corner exit. Lots of fun. It's really nice. If I was going to do a longer ride, I would definitely take the ZRX over the CSR, and it's just going to be, I think, a little bit less fatiguing. It's actually a little bit smoother on the throttle because of the taller gearing. Yeah, the ZRX is definitely more comfortable at speed. It's a smoother platform. The brakes are better. And if you're just looking for something for all-around use, I would say this is definitely the better bike. The previous owner actually used it to tour on and really enjoyed it for that. Let's go through a set of twisties here and just see how it feels. Very nice. Transitions easily, and you just have to wait for the right moment to unleash that torque. Neither the ZRX or the CSR is a good beginner bike. They're really more for advanced riders who are, and just really due to the nature of their power delivery and the amount of power that's on tap. It's very easy on either one of these bikes to stay in the throttle just a half second too long and overcook a corner and have just too much speed to scrub off before you get there. And so they're really rewarding to drive for an experienced rider, but it's not a novice. Neither bike is a novice bike by any stretch.
All right, that was super entertaining. What a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a real shocker. When I rode the CSR this morning, I rode it first, just because yesterday I had driven the ZRX. And man, when I was on it, I was actually surprised at how quick it was, and it felt every bit as quick as the ZRX. And I think a lot of that has to do with the gearing and being lower, and the way it makes power, and the sound from the pipe. It's very visceral, and it really wants to pull, and as soon as you crack the throttle. I was also really impressed by the comfort on the CSR, the way everything is laid out. It really is all-day comfortable. The CSR is actually refined enough that you can ride it slowly and enjoy it, but it's just with the way the throttle is set up. It's always right there with the throttle. It's always ready to go, ready to rumble. And I kind of like that. I like the edginess of it. You know, if I want to ride a cruiser that doesn't pressure me to go fast, I'll take a CB900 out and enjoy that and relax on that. This just isn't that type of bike. So jumping from my Hooligan CSR to the ZRX1200, it's really interesting. Some of the first things are how compact it is, how solid it feels, how little it moves around on its suspension. Other things that really stood out to me is the smoothness of the power delivery, the smoothness of the whole package. It's just very, very smooth motorcycle. Shift quality on these, I didn't really notice much of a difference. They both shift well. It was a real eye-opener to shift the Kawasaki down into 4th gear, which is almost geared exactly the same as the CSR's 5th gear. When I did that, this thing was beast. Just imagining, if this thing was running around at the same RPM, it would also have a much more edgy feel. I appreciate the fact that this has a taller 5th gear that I can actually leave it in and cruise around on, and it makes the ZRX more all-day comfortable. It makes it easier to live with. It also makes it a little bit less touchy on and off throttle. Over the course of an hour, it is a little bit less fatiguing to ride. And while I can really hustle the CSR on a back road and really hustle it through some corners and enjoy every second of it, really probably surprise guys on faster bikes, the ZRX has another level of performance that it's actually able to do. It has far more sporting brakes on it. Again, the suspension is much more, I guess, buttoned down, tighter controlled. The sporting rubber on it, it's got the 120 in the front and it's got the 180 in the rear. And so the modern tire sizes on the ZRX also give it just that, you know, much higher absolute G load that you can do in the corners. The ZRX just has a much larger performance envelope than the CSR has. And I think really that's kind of just the nature of progression. You know, this is a 1981, this is a 2002. That's 20 years of progress, and the refinement of the ZRX, it feels refined even by today's standards. So which one is my favorite? Which one do I enjoy riding more? You know, I had to say, if I only had one bike in the garage, I would go with the ZRX, because it's able to do a wider range of riding and do it comfortably. And so the CSR is still able to do a wide range of riding, but it's, you know, it's more of a hot rod when I want to just kind of go out and have fun and enjoy it. But it's just edgy. It's a bike that I get on, and even if I've ridden this the day before, that feels impressive. And I think that just speaks for how good the CSR is, again, even by today's standards. Looks-wise, you know, that's another factor too here. I love the look of the CSR, and I love the look of the ZRX. That is, you know, they're both just absolutely gorgeous bikes. So I'm interested to know what your thoughts are. What do you think? Is the ZRX the better bike, or, you know, are you a diehard CSR fan? I don't know if you can tell, but I've had just a really enjoyable time doing this comparison and riding two of my favorite Kawasaki's back to back. So I hope you found this video informative and entertaining, and until next time, enjoy the ride.